Before the top of the hour, Kellyanne Conway joins us right now. She's on the north lawn of the White House. Good morning to Kellyanne.
Good morning.
Well, it's Mueller Monday. All the channels are talking about how Robert Mueller will announce his first indictment or indictments later today. We know this because somebody blabbed to CNN. Somebody leaked that. That may or may not be a crime. What are your thoughts?
People are just speculating now. We don't know what's going to happen. As the president has said, everybody's fully cooperating, and we'll let these investigations, there are 3 of them, one in the House, one in the Senate, one by Mr. Mueller and his very expansive, large team of attorneys going forward. But the president has also made very clear, as recently as this weekend, that he considers this a hoax, and that people should be looking into any coordination, if not collusion, between the Clinton campaign, the DNC, this Russian dossier. I mean, could you imagine, I was campaign manager, could you imagine just paying $9 million and nobody knowing that you did that for a document that still is not verified? It's not even possible. I have to tell you, it's not possible. You saw how we were spending our money a lot on digital ads. The president was the best communicator and connector. You know, we just had a different candidate and a better message.
But Kellyanne, did your campaign, did you finance opposition research?
So that's very typical, but let me just tell you something. You usually get that from publicly available information. Sure. You don't go and dig around with foreign nationals like this British man, Mr. Steele.
I understand, but it seems like every campaign for president does do oppo research on the other side.
Sure, but let me just say, by the time I got involved in the campaign, the messages were very clear. Donald Trump was going to continue with a positive economic message. He was going to name terrorists who they were, radical Islamic terrorists, and put ISIS in retreat, if not full on defeat. He promised a tax cut. He promised to repeal and replace Obamacare. Those are just better messages, and he obviously was a much better messenger. Now, having said that, I was a student of Hillary Clinton's. I remember the first time she tried to destroy the nation's healthcare system some 25 years earlier. And so anything you needed to know negative about Hillary Clinton was right in front of you. She provided endless material and continues to. Right. So it was a very different situation because you saw in the polling, everybody's polling showed that a majority of Americans consistently said that she was neither honest nor trustworthy. So they weren't going to say to themselves, I don't trust her, but I think I'll vote for her.
Why is it?
And that's, so anyway, that's the campaign. But I think, and we would be happy to stop talking about Hillary Clinton in the campaign. We dispensed with her a year ago. But she just won't go away. People are covering her book like it's not fiction, and they keep talking about what happened a year ago in these campaigns. But whatever happens today with the Mueller investigation, we don't even know that it has anything to do with the campaign, what happens today.
Mm-hmm. Why isn't Hillary or her campaign and the DNC, why aren't they getting investigated for the Uranium One deal or for Fusion GPS, the dossier?
Because most people who would be doing the investigating / covering the said investigation, Ainsley, voted for her and neither expected nor wanted the election results. They want her to be working behind me in that building. And so there's part of that. The other thing is they'll say, oh, she lost, so it doesn't really matter. It does matter, because I think the most important piece of the non-investigation right now is the Russians trying to gain advantage. When Hillary Clinton was becoming Secretary of State, they were trying to gain advantage, according to the Hill report from last week, with her husband, and other people in the Obama administration. That, at the very least, should be investigated, because that's not possible interference with an election. Right. That's actually trying to get an advantage with our federal government, with our country, and that seems worth investigating.
Right. Kellyanne, there was a series of tweets yesterday in the morning from the president about this, from the fake dossier, investigate the Russian deal, there was no collusion. And then out came a statement from Ty Cobb. He says the president's comments today are unrelated to the activities of the special counsel, with whom he continues to cooperate. Why do you think that was important for him to put out?
Because people were probably out there making their own conclusions, and they all sound very similar. I've talked about the problem with the sameness of the coverage every single time. But look, the president is very focused on other things. What he said yesterday in his tweets is no different from what he said all along, except now we have some dollar figures. So we could talk about the $9 million, the $12 million that the DNC and the Hillary Clinton's campaign frittered away on nonsense. But the president has said from the beginning, people are cooperating, and that he just thinks it's an entire hoax. I want to just tell you that the president continues to focus on what matters to people, though. Just look at last week. Last week was a tremendously successful week for this president. That's why people aren't focused on it. That's why they're focused on Mr. Mueller's investigation
Kellyanne,
this morning.
something else that's going to happen this week, I believe on Wednesday, November 1st, Kevin Brady and the House Ways and Means folks are going to start detailing what their tax plan is. We did a Fox News poll within the last week or so, and if we could put it up, clearly, look here, people are frustrated about the way the government spends the money, corporate loopholes, middle class overpays too much, wealthy pays too little. The system is really complicated. Clearly, people want, according to our polling, some sort of tax reform.
Yes, they do. These numbers are so much more important than the silly approval ratings everybody covers continuously, because this actually matters to people. The numbers that matter to people is that they feel like they are fleeced and treated unfairly by our current tax code. This president wants tax cuts for the middle class, and he wants to reduce the rate on our job creators. Even Claire McCaskill, Democratic senator of Missouri, yesterday was on a different network talking about how she can live with a lower corporate tax rate. No surprise she's up for re-election next year in a state that President Trump won handily and carried over a couple of the major candidates with him across the finish line. So you look at numbers like that, and then you look at numbers like the consumer confidence numbers. Manufacturing confidence went from 56% to 90%. That's not a rounding error. That's real movement and real progress. You look at the 53 highs of the stock market just since this president took over.
Right.
The trillions of dollars in wealth that's been created, and the trillions of dollars in wealth that got created the last time we had a major tax cut and tax overhaul like this in 1986. Although this president promises it'll be even bigger and bolder. He has signed 71 bills into law, 14 or 15 congressional review acts, all this stuff people don't want to talk about. Close to 900 regulations overturned that were duplicative and burdensome to taxpayers, to property owners, to business, to job creators. So I think that poll that you showed is so incredibly important, because it's Americans standing up for themselves and saying, we're the forgotten man and the forgotten woman being fleeced by this tax code. They know he's going to give them relief.
And Kellyanne, real quick, from your years as a campaign manager, know the inner workings of his campaign, John Podesta sat next to Mark Elias and told that Intelligence Committee that he did not know anything about the $9 million spent on Fusion GPS. From what you, and for Debbie Wasserman-Schultz doesn't know anything about the $3.6 million the DNC spent. From what you know, do you believe both are lying?
I believe it strains credulity that either of them would know this, that nobody knows what happened to $9 million. I know she spent, she lit on fire a lot of hundreds of millions of dollars to lose for the second time. But somebody has to be responsible for this. And it's so curious to me that Hillary Clinton didn't know, campaign chairman, I guess her campaign manager hasn't spoken up. But I want to say something. A lot of these folks are now on networks and cable television stations, some of them paid. They sat there for a year. Somebody had to know this. And they sat there for a year silently, lying, concealing information possibly, when all this conversation has been about the dossier and the Trump campaign. And let me just make clear, that dossier has never been verified. It has never been independently corroborated. It's full of junk and lies. We've known that from the beginning. And folks, we have wasted a year now of taxpayer dollars at the very least on an investigation that so far has gone nowhere. Right.
But Ty Cobb says the president has nothing but good things to say about the investigation, because he wants to.
Yeah, well, we're complying.
Yeah.
And listen, we hardly discuss it. I don't remember the last time I discussed this with the president, of all the things you talked about, including this weekend. It's not even raised, because it's how do we get tax reform done. He's preparing for his big Asia trip. Last week, the GDP for the second consecutive quarter over 3%, even though we had a lot of hurricane relief in there, rightfully so.
That's a big number, given that. All right.
It's a big number. It's got a lot going on that's good for the American people.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Kellyanne Conway on a beautiful day in Washington. Meanwhile, straight ahead, the church where George Washington worshipped is taking down a plaque in his honor. But isn't that erasing history? Carly Shimkus promises to walk on our studio right now.
Hello, Carly.